Mafia Boss gets a call from the hospital. She listed you as emergency contact. The first thing to register is the smell. Antiseptic, sharp and sterile. Cutting through the fog in my head, it's the smell of bleached floors and sanitized regret. The second is the sound, a rhythmic, electronic beep. Steady, too steady. I open my eyes. The light is a flat, fluorescent white that hurts. It buzzes. A low hum beneath the beeping. My head is screaming, a dull, throbbing bass drum behind my temples. I try to lift a hand to touch it, but my arm feels like it's full of wet sand. When I finally get my fingers to my forehead, they come away dry. I'm in a hospital. St. Elora General. The name floats up from the fog. I'm on a gurney in a curtained-off bay. The curtain is a pale, sickly green. The monitor beside me is tracking my heart. Beep, beep, beep. I stare at the green line jumping in time with my pulse. It's the only thing in the room that seems to have any life. What happened? My mind is a fractured mirror. I see fragments, the community center basement, the excited faces of the tenants from the Wharfside district, the smell of old coffee and righteous anger, the fundraiser. We'd raised almost $11,000, enough to keep the lawyers fighting the evictions for another month. I see my own hands, gesturing, pointing at the data on the projector screen. They can't displace families that have been here for 3 generations, I hear myself say. We will not let the Urban Safeguard Bureau and their developer cronies turn our homes into glass boxes. I look down at my hand now, lying pale against the white hospital sheet. There's a smear of bright blue dust jammed under my fingernails. Paint. The poster, Keep Harbor Light Human. I was hanging it right before I left, my last act of defiance before what? The parking lot, that's the next fragment. Cold night air, the jingle of my keys, the blinding white glare of headlights, a black SUV, no plates, accelerating, not slowing. I remember a sickening crunch. Not me, not yet. The sound of the SUV's bumper hitting the concrete parking stop just inches from my legs. A deliberate, terrifying thud meant to stop my heart. It worked. I stumbled back, tripped over my own feet, my head connecting with the unforgiving edge of a concrete planter. The world didn't go black. It just fractured, and then nothing. Until the antiseptic and the beeping. Miss Quinn Mara, a woman in bright blue scrubs, parts the green curtain. Her face is kind but exhausted. She has a clipboard. Clipboards are never good news. "Welcome back," she says, forcing a smile. "You gave us a bit of a scare. You have a nasty concussion and some significant bruising, but you're going to be okay." I try to speak. My throat is sandpaper. Water. She nods, pouring a small cup from a plastic pitcher. It's lukewarm and tastes like the plastic it came from, but it's heaven. My bag," I rasp, thinking of my phone, my laptop. "The police have your belongings from the scene. Miss Quinn, they'll want to speak with you when you're feeling up to it." She checks the monitor, then makes a note on her clipboard. "You're lucky. A few more inches and..." She doesn't finish. I nod, lucky. "We did manage to get your emergency contact information." The nurse continues, her eyes on the chart. "We've already called him. He's on his way." A cold prickle, sharper than the IV needle in my arm, slides down my spine. "Him, I don't have an emergency contact listed. I always leave it blank." I'm alone in Harbor Light. My parents are gone. There is no one. The nurse frowns, tapping the paper. "No, it's right here, clearly listed, a Mr. Damien Rook." The name hangs in the sterile air, heavy and impossible. Damien Rook, I know that name. Everyone in Harbor Light City knows that name, even if they only speak it in whispers. The Rook Syndicate. The underground logistics corporation that owns half the port and controls the other half. The man who moves in shadows. His legitimate businesses, a fortress wall hiding. Well, hiding whatever it is men like him hide. I'd seen him once, a year ago. He'd attended a library fundraiser, standing in the back corner in a suit that cost more than my annual salary. He observed, his eyes missing nothing. He left without speaking to a soul. 2 days later, an anonymous donation for $50,000 arrived, saving our entire literacy program. I only knew it was him because I recognized the stylized raven crest of his holding company on the cashier's check. He'd vanished after that, a ghost. "That's impossible," I say, my voice shaking. "I've never even spoken to him. There must be a mistake." The nurse just shrugs, her professional sympathy kicking in. "It's what the file says, honey. He should be here soon." She pats my arm and draws the curtain closed, leaving me alone with the beeping and a new, terrifying confusion. Someone tampered with my hospital records. It had to be them, the Urban Safeguard Bureau, the quasi-private enforcement agency that was squeezing the life out of the wharf side. They were the ones I was fighting. They were the ones who sent the SUV. This was their next move. But why? Why Damien Rook to scare me? To link me to the criminal element I was trying to protect the community from? My thoughts are cut short by a change in the atmosphere outside my curtain. The low murmur of the emergency room, the coughs, the quiet sobbing, the squeak of nurses' shoes, it all just stops. The air pressure drops. The background noise of Harbor Light General is sucked into a vacuum. I hear the heavy, electronic swoosh of the main sliding doors, then a sound that cuts through the silence, the hard, rhythmic impact of polished leather on tile. It's not a hurry, it's an arrival. I push myself up on my elbows, wincing as my bruised shoulder screams. The green curtain is pulled back, not by a nurse. He's taller than I remembered. His black wool overcoat hangs perfectly, unbuttoned, revealing a simple dark gray suit. He isn't a man who feels the cold. He's a man who creates it. His hair is black. His face is all sharp angles and unforgiving planes. He looks less like a man and more like a judgment. Damien Rook. He doesn't look at me. Not at first. His eyes, the color of wet steel, scan the tiny bay. They check the IV drip, the monitor, the flimsy curtain rod. He's assessing the room for threats, for weaknesses. Behind him, a second man lingers at the edge of the curtain, built like a reinforced door, with a calm, watchful face and an earpiece. This man's eyes, unlike his boss's, land directly on me and stay there. Finally, Damien Rook's gaze settles on my face. It's heavy. It's an evaluation. It's the most intense, unnerving silence I have ever experienced. Then his eyes drop. They move from my face down to my shoulder, where the thin hospital gown has slipped, revealing the dark, blooming galaxy of a bruise. I see something flicker in their steel gray depths, a micro-expression. Too fast to name. It's not pity. It's colder. It's calculating. He gives a barely perceptible jerk of his head. The mountain of a man at the curtain, Evo, I would learn was, his name merges back into the hallway shadows. A few seconds later, I hear the quiet, authoritative murmur of his voice and the hushed, deferential replies of the hospital staff. He's clearing the area. Damien Rook takes one step closer to the gurney. He doesn't speak. He just watches me, and I suddenly feel exposed in a way that has nothing to do with the flimsy gown. "Who are you?" I whisper, the words barely audible. "Why are you here?" "You listed me," he says. His voice is a low rumble, like gravel settling deep underground. It's not a question. It's a statement of fact. "I didn't," I insist, my pulse jumping on the monitor. "Beep, beep, beep. I don't know you. Someone put your name there. It was the USB. He cocks his head, a small, almost imperceptible movement. "The USB gives orders. It doesn't file paperwork." He seems to dismiss the idea as irrelevant. Before I can argue, my phone, tucked in a clear plastic hospital bag on the rolling tray table, vibrates. Damien's eyes snap to it. With a shaking hand, I reach for it. My lock screen is lit up. A new message. I don't recognize the number. I tap it open. It's a photograph, taken from a distance, grainy, and washed out by the parking lot lights. It's me. I'm on the ground, a crumpled shape next to the concrete planter. My head is turned at an unnatural angle. My stomach clenches. Beneath the photo, a single line of text. "Next time, Keep your mouth shut about other people. A cold sweat breaks out over my entire body. This is real. This isn't just a threat. It's a promise. They tried to scare me, and now they're making sure I stay scared. They're watching, even here. I must make a sound, a small gasp, because Damian Rook's focus shifts from the phone back to my face. He sees the terror. He sees the resolve in my eyes crumbling. He takes the phone from my trembling hand. His long, calloused fingers are surprisingly gentle, but a charge passes through my skin at the brief contact. He reads the message. His expression doesn't change, but the stillness in him deepens, hardens, becomes absolute. He pockets my phone. "Hey," I protest, my voice weak. "Give that back." He ignores me, looking past my head as if listening to something far away. He seems to come to a decision. He looks back down at me. The full weight of his attention lands on me, and I feel like I can't breathe. "From now on," Damian Rook says, his voice low and final, "I'll take it from here." It's not a comfort, it's a command. The line hasn't just been drawn, it's been carved into stone, and I'm standing on his side of it, whether I want to be or not. I'll take it from here. His words settle over me. A 300-pound weighted blanket. It's not comforting, it's suffocating. My mind flashes back, trying to find the thread that led me here, the community center. The projector hummed, casting my spreadsheets onto the concrete wall. I was alive, vibrating with purpose. The Atlantic Port arbitration isn't just selling empty buildings, I'd told the crowd. They're selling our buildings. I've digitized the ledgers from 1998. These warehouse auctions are illegal. The APA is using shell companies to buy properties they've intentionally undervalued. I had the proof, the digital trail. That's what this was about. My data. My memory jumps, the parking lot, the SUV. It hadn't been trying to run me over. I see it clearly now. It had been a calculated act of violence, a kneecapping, with a 2-ton vehicle. It lunged, stopping with a brutal, frame-shuddering halt just close enough to shatter the concrete parking stop and my nerves. It was a message. "We can touch you." The fall was my own clumsy mistake, my head finding the only sharp edge in the darkness. They didn't mean to kill me. Not yet. They just meant to break me. I look back at the man who has my phone. "You can't just—" Damian Rook isn't listening. He's moving. His attention has shifted from me to the gurney I'm lying on. He bends, his overcoat parting slightly. He runs his fingers along the underside of the thin mattress pad. His touch is precise, methodical. He's not searching. He knows what he's looking for. His fingers stop. He peels something from the metal frame. When he straightens up, he's holding a tiny black square between his thumb and forefinger. It's no bigger than a fingernail, impossibly thin. A tracker. It's been broadcasting my location since I was brought in. Evo, the mountain, materializes at the curtain's edge. He doesn't need to be summoned. Damian holds up the device. Evo nods once, steps forward and takes it. He pulls a small, silver-lined pouch from his jacket pocket, drops the tracker inside, and seals it. The movement is fluid, practiced, and over in less than a second. My signal is gone. "Who?" I start. "How did you know?" "You're a librarian," Damian says, his voice flat. "You deal in facts. The fact is, you're a problem for them. And they're sloppy." A nurse bustles in, this one older, with a clipboard and an administrator's pinched expression. "Mr. Rook, a moment, there's just the matter of the insurance transfer." I frown. I have my own insurance. It's basic, but it's valid. The administrator gives me a look of mild pity. "Your previous plan wouldn't have covered this level of trauma care, dear. It's been superseded. Your account is now covered under a VIP designation." She taps her pen on the clipboard. "It was processed about 30 minutes ago. The charges are being directed to the North Crest Civic Foundation." "I've never heard of them." Damian's eyes narrow. Just a fraction. It's the first real reaction I've seen from him. He knows the name. "That's fine," he says, dismissing her. She looks like she wants to argue, or perhaps get an autograph, but something in his posture makes her simply nod and scuttle away. I don't understand, I say, my head spinning. Who is North Crest? An old enemy, Damien says, the words clipped. One who thinks he's my rival. He's not. He's just, loud. He's trying to claim you, to put his tag on you. Before I can process this new layer of horror that I'm some kind of property to be claimed, Damien has his own phone out. He doesn't dial, he just speaks to it. Jane, a pause. She's in the ER, Bay 4, concussion, severe bruising. She's compromised. He listens. No, not your floor. Ward K, now. He puts the phone away. Ward K. I know St. Elora, Ward K doesn't officially exist. It's the ghost wing, the place where politicians go to dry out and billionaires get quiet plastic surgery, the place for the anonymous. Wait, I say, trying to sit up. The room tilts. I'm not going anywhere. I don't need this. I don't need you. I don't need the mafia. The word hangs in the air. Mafia. I said it. Damien Rook turns his full attention back to me. The weight of it presses me back into the pillow. What you need, he says, his voice dangerously soft, is a border. They crossed yours. I'm building a new one. I don't want your border. It's not a request. From the hallway, a television blurts out the local evening news. A reporter is standing in the rain, looking windswept and serious. We're live at the Old Harbor Light shipyard, she says, where just moments ago, the Urban Safeguard Bureau conducted a major raid. Sources tell us they've uncovered a significant fentanyl processing operation. My blood turns to ice. No, I whisper. What? Damien asks, his focus sharp. The shipyard, that's where we store the donations, the books. We have a partnership with the shipyard owner for community storage. I was just there 3 days ago. The camera zooms in on USB officers in tactical gear carrying evidence boxes out of the main warehouse. My warehouse. Damien Rook moves so he's standing right beside the gurney. He leans in, not threateningly but intimately. The world shrinks to just the two of us, and the smell of his wool coat clean, cold and faintly metallic. They didn't just hit you, he murmurs, connecting the dots with terrifying speed. They hit your center. They planted that. They're not just trying to silence you. Mara, they're trying to discredit you. They want to tie a community activist to a phantom drug supply. They want to break the voice of the community by painting its librarian as a criminal. The world is tilting, and I'm sliding off it. My data, my reputation, the center, the kids. I don't know what I have to do. Call someone, go there. You have to live, he says. He reaches down, one arm slides beneath my shoulders, the other under my knees. I'm too stunned to protest as he lifts me from the gurney. I weigh nothing to him. The motion is effortless. He's strong, but it's a controlled, contained strength, like a machine built for a single, heavy purpose. Ivo, he says, the big man is there. He's holding a plain black duffel bag. He's also holding a long, dark umbrella, still closed. Damien places me on my feet. The floor is cold. My head swims, and I grip his forearms to steady myself. His muscles are like steel cables beneath the fine suit. He doesn't flinch. Get dressed, he commands, gesturing to the bag. Ivo turns his back, a silent, respectful statue, guarding the curtain. Damien steps out into the hall, his back to me. A wall against the rest of the hospital? My hands are shaking so hard I can barely work the zipper. Inside the bag are simple gray sweatpants, a thick black hoodie, and sneakers, new. They're my size. How did they know my size? The question is terrifying. I pull them on over my thin hospital underwear, my body aching with every movement. When I'm done, I feel small, swallowed by the thick, warm fleece. I step out from behind the curtain. Damien turns. He looks at me, his eyes taking in the oversized hoodie. Let's go. Ivo takes the lead. Damien's hand finds the small of my back, a firm, possessive pressure that isn't a request. It's a guidance. It's an order. We move. We don't go out the main entrance. We go through a set of double doors marked staff only, down a concrete stairwell that smells like disinfectant, and out a side exit into the night. The rain is coming down in sheets, cold and unforgiving. The city lights of Harbor Light are a blurry, watercolor smear. A long, black armored sedan is idling at the curb, its engine a low, throbbing purr. It looks like a block of polished obsidian. Ivo opens the back door and then pops the umbrella, holding it over me, creating a small, temporary shelter from the storm. Damien's hand is still on my back, urging me forward. The red and blue lights of ambulances flash in the distance, reflecting off the wet pavement. They feel a million miles away. I slide onto the black leather seat. It's warmer than the air. Damien gets in beside me. The door shuts with a heavy, solid thunk, sealing out the sound of the rain, the city, and my old life. We pull away from the curb, a silent, dark shape gliding into the wet streets. The ambulance lights recede in the window, and I'm alone in the dark with him, trapped. The sedan climbed, leaving the grit of the city docks far below. We ascended a private road cut directly into the face of Harbor Light Point, the storm lashing the windows with curtains of salt water. The car didn't skid, its tires gripping the wet asphalt with unnatural confidence. Below us, the port was a chaotic sprawl of sodium orange lights, blurred by the rain. The road ended. We stopped before a set of severe black metal gates. Ivo aimed the headlights at a discreet sensor, and the gates slid open silently, revealing not a house, but a fortress. Rook Cliff House. It wasn't a house. It was an accusation against the sky, a structure of impossible angles, all dark steel and sheer glass walls, cantilevered over the cliff edge. It looked like it was designed to watch, not to be lived in. As we approached, the darkness erupted. A series of motion-activated floodlights snapped on, one after another, illuminating the rain-slicked stone and glass. It wasn't welcoming. It was an apex predator, waking up as we entered its territory. The car slid into an underground garage, the door sealing behind us with a pneumatic hiss. The silence was immediate and absolute. Damien got out and walked around to my door, opening it before I could find the handle. He didn't offer a hand, he just waited. I slid out, the hoodie he'd given me feeling ridiculously large, like a child's costume. We entered an elevator, a glass box that rose through the guts of the house. We emerged into a space that stole my breath. It was a vast, open room where the entire sea-facing wall was glass, 2 stories high. The storm was on full display, a raging, majestic spectacle of black water and white foam. Lightning cracked, illuminating the churning ocean hundreds of feet below. "Mr. Damien, you're late." The voice was warm, accented, and held an authority that rivaled his, an older woman, her skin the color of rich walnut and her white hair pulled into a tight, elegant bun, walked towards us. She was small but moved with an unshakable center of gravity. She held a thick cashmere blanket. "Tanta Lila," Damien inclined his head. It was the first sign of deference I'd seen him show to another human being. Her dark, knowing eyes landed on me. She didn't look surprised. She looked resigned, perhaps. She came directly to me, ignoring Damien completely, and wrapped the blanket around my shoulders. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and lavender. "The wind is strong here," she said, her voice a low, comforting hum. "But the heart is what matters. You are cold. Come." She led me away from the wall of glass towards a massive, modern fireplace where a low fire burned. She pressed a warm mug into my hands, cinnamon tea. It was sweet and hot, and I realized I was shaking, not from the cold, but from the adrenaline crash. I looked at Damien, who was standing by the window, a dark silhouette against the raging storm. "I don't know why I'm here." "You are here because he brought you," Tanta Lila said simply, as if that explained everything. "Drink. You are safe in this house." Was I safe in the house? Perhaps. But was I safe from the man who owned it? He turned from the window. "Lila, show her to the east guest room. Get her something to eat." "I am not hungry," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I want answers. Who is Silas Calder? Why did that foundation pay my bill? What is happening?" Damien looked at me. The firelight caught the planes of his face, casting shadows under his sharp cheekbones. "Later. First, you get settled." "No. Now." I set the mug down. "I am not one of your employees. I am not. Whatever you think I am, you brought me here against my will." He considered me for a long moment. He seemed to be weighing options. Finally, he nodded. "This way." He didn't lead me to a guest room. He led me down a hallway to a library, but it wasn't an old-world, wood-paneled room. It was stark and modern, like the rest of the house, with floor-to-ceiling shelves, and it was filled with books. My books. Not my books, but the books I lived with. I scanned the titles. The Sociology of Urban Displacement, Community Organizing in the Post-Industrial Age, Power Structures of Municipal Governance. My hand drifted to a specific, obscure title. The People's History of the Harbor, Light Dockers Union. I'd recommended that one in a newsletter for the Community Center Literacy Program just 2 months ago. My blood ran cold, a different kind of chill than the rain had given me. You've been... "I read," he said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "You've been very loud, Miss Quinn, for a very long time. I was curious what you had to say." He'd been listening, not just watching, listening. This wasn't a sudden intervention. It was a calculated one. A sleek panel on the wall chimed softly. A synthesized female voice, smooth and cool, spoke to the room. Guest identified. Mara Quinn, profile initiated. On the panel, my driver's license photo appeared. Beneath it, text scrolled, "Status Priority Protection." "What is that?" I whispered. "Demonics," Damien said. "The house AI. She manages security." "Priority Asset Protect." I read aloud, "I'm not an asset." "You are today," he said, and turned to a massive screen that was disguised as a piece of abstract art. He tapped a remote, and the art dissolved, replaced by a satellite map of the harbor light docks. It was glowing with data. Hundreds of lines, green and red, crisscrossed the water. "This is my world," Marhi said. He pointed to the green lines. "Clean, audited, customs-paid logistics, my legitimate business." Then he pointed to the red lines, which all seemed to originate from a specific set of wharves. "This is the filth, guns, untaxed goods, and, as of tonight, fentanyl. These routes are controlled by one man, Silas Calder. He's a port broker who works for the highest bidder, and your friends at the APA are his new employers." He zoomed in on a red line that cut directly through the shipyard where my books had been stored. "Calder provides the muscle and the network. The USB provides the legal cover. The APA provides the political pull, a perfect triangle. And you, Miss Quinn, just walked into the middle of it with your spreadsheets." My head was throbbing again. "So you're what, the good guy mafia here to clean up the port?" A humorless smile touched his lips for a fraction of a second. "I am here to protect my business. Calder's operation is messy. It brings federal attention. It's bad for my clean roots. So I'm just a tool, a way to get at him." "You're the leverage," he corrected me. "He tried to use you to frame the community. The USB tried to use you to scare the neighborhood, and North Crest." He paused. "They tried to use you to get to me. They all made a mistake. They touched what was mine." "I'm not yours." The silence that followed was heavy, charged. He took a step closer. I didn't back up. "Then why?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "Was my name in your emergency contact field? I don't put my name on things I don't intend to claim." "I told you. I didn't put it there. The USB must have, The USB doesn't have access to my private identity." He cut me off. "No one does, except you, apparently." I stared at him, my mind racing, trying to find a memory that wasn't there. I would know. I would remember. "That's not true." "It doesn't matter," he said, turning away. "You're here now." "This is a cage," I said, gesturing to the glass, the steel, the AI that was tracking me. "It's a fortress," he countered. "You're free to leave. Evo will drive you back to your apartment, where Calder's men are likely waiting to finish the job. Or you can stay here. Let me cut the head off this snake, and then go back to your life." The moral calculus was dizzying. I had built my entire life on community trust, on transparency, on fighting the very shadows this man lived in. And now I was standing in his war room, being offered protection by the king of the shadows himself. "I won't trade my freedom for safety," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "You won't have to," he said. "You have my word. I will only intervene when the threat threshold is breached. Like tonight. Like tonight. And my center, the people there, my work. Untouched," he promised. "This is not about them. This is about Calder. You are simply the battlefield." Just then, the lights in the house flickered. The storm outside seemed to intensify, the wind howling. The massive screen on the wall went black, then rebooted. Damien's phone buzzed. He looked at it. It was Evo. "Yes." He listened, his body going utterly still. "Where?" He listened again. "Lock it down." He ended the call and looked at me. "The storm just gave them an opening. There's an unauthorized drone circling the house, trying to get a thermal scan." "A drone here?" "Calder is impatient or sloppy." He strode to the door. "We're moving." "Moving where?" "To the core." He led me to a discreet door I hadn't even noticed. It opened onto a narrow hall, and at the end, a single, thick, bank vault-style door. He pressed his thumb to a scanner. It hissed open. The room inside was the complete opposite of the rest of the house. No windows, no glass. The walls were covered in a matte gray, sound-dampening composite. It contained a simple bed, a desk with a hardwired terminal, and its own ventilation system. It was a panic room, a bunker, a tomb. I hesitated. "In," he commanded. I stepped inside. He followed and hit a control on the wall. The heavy door slid shut, the locking mechanisms engaging with a series of deep, heavy thuds. The sound of the storm vanished. There was no wind, no rain, no house, just absolute, pressurized silence. It was just the two of us. I turned to face him in the room's soft, indirect light. He was standing by the door, watching me. And for the first time, as the adrenaline faded and the stark reality of my situation settled in, I truly looked at his eyes. They weren't cold, not anymore. The steel was gone, replaced by something else. A banked fire, an intensity that was focused, sharp, and entirely on me. It was the look of a man who had just sealed himself inside a vault with the one thing in the world he couldn't afford to lose. The silence in the core room was absolute, a heavy, soundproof blanket. It made every beat of my heart sound like a hammer. Damien stood by the door, a sentinel, his entire body coiled, then through the composite walls. I felt it more than heard it, a deep, seismic thud that vibrated through the soles of my feet. Damien was already moving. He hit the control, and the heavy door hissed open, releasing us back into the house. The sound was deafening. A high-pitched, wailing alarm filled the air. Red lights strobed down the hallways. "Stay behind me!" Damien's voice cut through the noise. We ran back to the main room. The 2-story glass wall overlooking the ocean was now a scene of chaos. Evo stood in the center of the room, his feet planted wide. He was holding a weapon that looked like something from a science fiction movie, a long black rifle with no barrel, just 2 protruding nodes. "Atrium roof," Evo barked, not looking at Damien. "It breached the outer glass, trying to plant a repeater." As he spoke, a black, spider-like drone, easily 2 feet wide, punched through a shattered skylight panel. It hovered, rain and wind whipping into the room, and pivoted, a small, dark cylinder deploying from its undercarriage, a listening device. Evo didn't hesitate. He raised the rifle. There was no gunshot, just a sharp, violent crack of air. A visible arc of blue-white electricity leaped from the nodes and struck the drone. The machine convulsed, smoked, and dropped to the stone floor like a dead insect. The alarms kept wailing. Damien's phone, a different one from the one he'd taken from me, buzzed with a specific, urgent vibration. He snatched it from his jacket, his eyes still on the dead drone. "Speak." His face, already a mask of cold fury, hardened into something terrifying. The muscles in his jaw locked. "When?" he snapped. He listened for another 10 seconds. Understood. He ended the call and looked at me, his eyes burning with a cold fire. That was my insider. At the USB. "What?" I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "They're not waiting. They're moving on your community center. Tonight, they're calling it an emergency safety inspection, a response to the fentanyl bust they staged." My blood went cold. My server. "They're not stupid, Das," Damien said. "They know you made copies. They don't just want to discredit you with the drugs. They want the original data. They're going to seize your server, wipe it, and your entire case against the APA vanishes." "No," I lunged for the terminal. I can wipe it remotely. My mind flashed, the panic and the sterile light of the house suddenly replaced by the warm, dusty glow of the community center. It was a year ago, our spring fundraiser. The theme was Harbor Light Reads, and we were raising money for the Rare Book Preservation Program. The room smelled of old paper, lemon polish, and the cheap red punch Tanta Lila would have sniffed at. I was on the small stage, laughing, explaining the historical significance of a 19th century docker's ledger. I glanced toward the back of the room, by the exit, and I saw him. He wasn't part of the crowd. He was separate from it. He wasn't wearing the casual blazer of a local philanthropist. He was in a dark suit that seemed to absorb the light in the room. He wasn't listening to my speech. He was watching me. Just me. Our eyes met across the crowded room. It wasn't a glance. It was a collision. A jolt of pure, undiluted intensity. There was no warmth in it. No kindness. It was recognition. A predator sighting. Something, I didn't know what. It terrified me. I looked away for a second, my breath caught in my throat. When I looked back, he was gone. 2 days later, the anonymous check for $50,000 arrived. "Mara?" Damien's voice snapped me back to the present. He had me by the shoulders. "You can't wipe it. It's the only original proof you have." He turned, shouting over the alarm. "Evo, get the tech team online. I want our server mirrored. Full clone to cold storage. Now, get our legal team. I want an emergency injunction filed with the Port Adjudication Court within the hour. Block that search. I don't care who they have to wake up." Evo just nodded, already speaking into his earpiece as he moved to secure the breached skylight. Tanta Lila appeared at my side, her face grim. She was holding a tablet. "Mr. Damien, this is not good. It is on talkline." She turned the screen to me. My stomach dropped. It was a video, grainy, shot at night, but the face was clearly mine. I was standing by my car. A man in a dark jacket with the USB logo on the sleeve was handing me a thick white envelope. I took it. I smiled. I couldn't breathe. "That's not real. That never ever happened." "A deep fake," Damien said, his voice flat. He watched the view counter on the screen climb. 10,000, 20,000. "Silas isn't just a broker. He's a poison. I have to stop this." My voice was shaking with rage. "I have to go live. I can use the center's account. I can tell everyone it's a lie. I can show them." "No." "What do you mean, no? They are destroying me. They are painting me as a USB informant." "And what will you say?" Damien grabbed my arm, forcing me to look at him. "That it's a lie. You have no proof. They have a video. You will look guilty and desperate. Think, Mara. Think about who you're trying to protect. The community. The families. The children." He cut in, his voice dangerously soft. "Your reading program. The teenagers who trust you. Your witnesses. You go live now. You make yourself a bigger target. You paint a target on them. You put those children in the middle of a war with Silas Calder. Are you willing to risk their lives to save your reputation?" The fight drained out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow dread. He was right. Maria's son, Jesse, who had seen the USB officers planting things, the Johnson twins, who had recorded them harassing their father. They were kids. I couldn't. "So I do nothing," I whispered, slumping against the wall. "I just let them win." Damien watched me, his expression unreadable. The alarms finally cut off, replaced by the heavy, oppressive sound of the storm. He left the room. I heard his low murmur to Tanta Lila, and then he was back. He was holding a simple, black-handled chef's knife. He pressed it into my hand, hilt first. My fingers, numb and cold, instinctively closed around the hard rubber grip. It was heavy, real. "You do not do nothing," he said, his voice a low growl. His fingers brushed mine as he pressed the knife into my palm. "You hold this. You keep it. And you remember that you are not the helpless. You remember that you have the right to say enough. Anytime, anyone, you have that right." The cold steel was a bizarre comfort. It was a piece of reality in a world that had gone insane. It was permission. A chime, not the house, his personal phone, the one he had taken from me. He pulled it from his pocket. He read the screen, his face a perfect blank mask. Then he angled it so I could see. A new text message. "Meeting tonight, Doc 17. Come alone and we can fix this." "It's bait," I whispered, my blood running cold. They're trying to get me to meet them." "Yes," Damien said. "They think I'm broken, that I'll be scared enough to—" "They want you," he interrupted, pocketing the phone. He straightened his suit, which was uncreased despite the night's chaos. He ran a hand through his dark hair. "You can't go," I said, a new panic rising. "Damien, it's a trap. They'll kill you." He looked at me. "They don't want me. They want you. They'll get me." He turned to Evo, who had returned, his face grim. "Standard procedure. You stay. Full lockdown. No one in or out. You understand, no one. Until I give the all clear." Evo nodded, his jaw tight. "Sir?" Damien walked to the massive front door. He didn't just leave. He stopped. His hand on the steel handle. He turned back. He looked at me. His gaze swept over my face, my hair, the oversized hoodie swallowing me, and finally, his knife clutched in my white-knuckled hand. It wasn't a glance. It was a long, slow appraisal, as if he were memorizing every detail, burning the image of me into his mind. Then he opened the door. The wind and rain howled, a physical assault of noise and cold. He stepped out into the storm without flinching, a dark shape against the raging blackness, and was gone. The door sealed shut, the heavy locks engaging with a series of final, metallic thuds. I was alone, in a silent fortress, holding a knife. Tanta Lila's hand rested gently on my shoulder. I flinched, my grip tightening on the handle. "You can be weak in the muscle, child," she said softly, her voice a strange comfort in the sterile room, "but not in the will." The air at Dock 17 was thick, a cold, wet blanket smelling of low tide, diesel, and rust. The rain had paused, but the fog rolling off the harbor was so dense it muffled the sound of the water sloshing against the pilings. It was a ghost of a night, lit only by the sickly, humming orange of the sodium lamps. Damien walked alone. His polished shoes made no sound on the slick cobblestones. He moved through the canyons of stacked shipping containers, a man perfectly at home in a maze of steel. He scanned the logos, Hanjin, Maersk, and then a block of them, painted a dull, chipping blue Mistral freight, Silas's shell. He stopped, listening. There was nothing but the foghorn moaning out in the channel. The bait had been set. Now, he waited for the rats. Headlights cut the fog, splitting the orange glow, not his own sedan. 2 black SUVs, identical to the one that had attacked Mara. But these had the logo of the Urban Safeguard Bureau emblazoned on the doors. They pulled up, blocking the only exit. Doors opened, uniformed USB officers fanned out, their hands on their sidearms, but they kept their distance. They were the frame. The picture walked out of the lead vehicle. He wasn't in uniform. He wore a soft, expensive-looking gray suit that was already rumpled by the humidity. His hair was thinning, and he had the perpetually stressed look of a mid-level manager, a small, enamel pin on his lapel. The USB emblem was the only thing that marked him. This was Cade Mercer. "Mr. Rook," Mercer said, his voice trying for casual confidence and failing. "Nasty night for a stroll. We're just running a routine safety check. You know, since the unpleasantness at the shipyard earlier." Damien said nothing. He just waited. Mercer cleared his throat, rocked back on his heels. "Look, things are escalating. You know it. I know it. This librarian, this Mara Quinn, she's stirring up things she doesn't understand." He took a step closer, lowering his voice as if they were co-conspirators. "You have pull. We know you do. This community. These witnesses she's apparently scraped together. The kids. They're in the way. They're complicating the port's revitalization." He smiled, a thin, damp expression. "You convince her to disavow. Get her to retract her statements. In exchange, the USB can offer a significant protection package for your own, legitimate assets. We look the other way on your roots. You get her to shut the children up. We all win." Damien's stillness was absolute. He saw the trap. It wasn't an arrest. It was a negotiation. If he engaged, if he even acknowledged Mercer's offer, he would be on tape, conspiring with a corrupt official, obstructing a federal investigation, tampering with witnesses. Mercer wasn't here to make a deal. He was here to create a new crime, one that would legally tie Damien to the entire mess. "You're making a mistake," Damien said, his voice flat. "Am I?" Mercer chuckled. "I'm holding all the cards. Rook, my men are documenting this as we speak. Subject attempted to bribe an officer of the Bureau, or subject interfered with a state investigation. Your pick." Damien tilted his head, a gesture of almost imperceptible curiosity. "You think you're in charge?" "I know I am." Damien glanced up, just for a second, past Mercer, into the fog-shrouded darkness above the container stacks. "Now," Mercer said. From the darkness above, a high-pitched, electric whine. It was the sound of a massive motor engaging. Mercer looked up, confused. "What the hell is that?" A shadow detached itself from the fog. A 40-foot steel shipping container, held aloft by the magnetic crane high above, was moving. It wasn't moving fast, but it was moving deliberately. What are you doing?" Mercer stammered, backing up as the multi-ton block of steel swung directly over the path between the two USB vehicles. With a sound like a guillotine dropping, the magnetic locks released. The container fell the last 10 feet, crashing onto the pavement with a deafening, metallic boom that shook the entire dock. It landed perfectly, blocking the exit, separating Mercer and his personal vehicle from the rest of his team. Evo, miles away, had just ended the conversation. Mercer stared at the wall of steel, his mouth open. "The deal is off," Damien said, walking past him, toward the waterfront, away from the blocked exit. You can't do that," Mercer spun around. That's assault, that's..." Damien stopped. He turned. "Cade Mercer, you live at 4125 Sparrow Creek Lane. You have a 30-year mortgage with Northcrest Federal Council credit. Your account number is 008132-9-44. You have a current balance of $31,458. It's the account you use for your consulting fees, the one your wife doesn't know about." Mercer's face went from angry to sheet white in a single heartbeat. The blood drained from his face, leaving a pale, clammy mask of terror. "The next person who contacts me," Damien continued, his voice ablaze in the fog, "will be from the IRS, or the SEC, or maybe just Northcrest. They're very particular about their clients. Stay away from the librarian. Stay away from her center." He left Mercer shaking beside the container and vanished into the fog, a ghost walking back to his own world. Back at the Cliff House, I was vibrating. The panic had subsided, replaced by a cold, sharp-edged rage. Tanta Lila's words echoed in my head, not in the will. I would not be a damsel. I would not be a protected asset. I was a librarian. I was an archivist. My weapons were not knives. They were data. I left the main room and went back to the core, the windowless bunker. The terminal in there was hardwired, separate from the house's main network. It was his, but I could make it mine. I still had my credentials, my access. I sat down, my fingers flying over the keyboard. I bypassed the house's luxurious interface and went straight to the command line. I routed my connection through a dozen encrypted nodes, but I used the house's sheer processing power as my engine. I was aiming at the community center's server. The USB had put up a firewall, a digital do not enter sign. They had locked me out of my own system, but they were sloppy. They were cops, not archivists. They blocked the front door, but they forgot I had built the backdoor API myself. I tunneled in, my credentials flashing, and I was inside. The boiler room, we called it, our secure digital archive. I didn't go for the files I'd already presented. I went deeper. I went for the raw metadata, the APA transaction logs, the auction records, and then I found it. A scanned PDF, the original, signed auction minutes for the shipyard warehouse, the one they were now calling a fentanyl lab. I had seen this document before, but now, with Damien's words ringing in my ears, I looked closer. I ran a filter, checking the digital signature of the APA clerk who had certified it. The signature was clean, but then I checked the timestamp. The timestamp of the scan was dated yesterday. The timestamp of the signature was dated tomorrow. It was a fake, a clumsy, arrogant fake. They hadn't just railroaded the community, they had falsified public records to do it. This was a federal crime. This was the leverage. This was the weapon. I cloned the file, encrypting it and routing it to a dozen decentralized servers, including one hardwired to the terminal in front of me. I had him. I had them. I was about to stand up, to find Evo, to show him what I'd found, when the terminal pinged. A new alert, not from my network, from the houses. It was from Talkline, the social media app that was eating Harbor Light, a public post. From Silas, Calder. Get the librarian out of my story. Rook, this is your only warning. You think she's safe. You think you can hide her stop, or else. Beneath the text was an image. My breath caught. It wasn't a deep fake. It wasn't old. It was a live photo. The front doors of the Harbor Light Community Center. I could see the poster I'd hung, the one with the blue paint. I could see the timestamp in the corner. It was from 2 minutes ago. And I could see 3 children walking up the steps, backpacks on, ready for the after-school reading program. The front door of the Cliff House hissed open. I ran from the core room. Damien was standing in the entrance, the fog and salt spray clinging to his black overcoat. He looked unharmed. He looked eternal. He saw my face. He saw the terror. "What?" he demanded. I pointed, speechless, at the massive screen where the Talkline post was now displayed. He read the words. He saw the picture of the children. His eyes met mine. The cold calculation was back, but it was mixed with something else, a realization. He finally understood. I understood. The leverage wasn't me. It wasn't the data. It was the community. It was the children. As long as I was fighting for them, they were targets. He turned to Evo, who was sealing the door. "Ready the long-range vehicle. We leave the city." "What?" I found my voice. "No, I'm not leaving. I just found it. Damien, I found the proof. A forged document. It's a federal crime. I can end this." He turned back to me. He walked over until he was standing so close I could feel the cold radiating from his coat. "You found a weapon," he said, his voice low and guttural. "They just aimed theirs. This isn't about the law anymore. This is about who burns first." "I'm not running." "You're not running," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. You're regrouping. You can't protect those children if you're a target. We're taking the target off the board. We're leaving now. I'm not running away. I planted my feet on the stone floor of the garage, the heavy, armored SUV, not the sedan. This was something else. Something built for war was idling, its engine a low, threatening growl. That's exactly what they want. For me to disappear, it proves I'm guilty. Damien didn't pause. He didn't argue. He simply moved. He was in front of me, and then I was off the ground, one arm scooped under my knees, the other securely around my back, lifting me as if I weighed nothing. "Oh, put me down," I yelled, my fists beating uselessly against the solid muscle of his chest. "You can't do this. This is kidnapping, Damien." He ignored my protests, my voice sounding small and thin in the concrete garage. He deposited me into the passenger seat, buckled the heavy-duty restraint across my lap, and shut the door. The sound was as final as a vault closing. He got in the driver's side. Evo was already in a separate lead vehicle. In seconds, we were moving, tearing out of the garage and back down the cliff road. The city lights of Harbor Light, a place I had spent my entire life defending, vanished behind us. We didn't take the main highway. Damien drove with a silent, focused intensity, turning onto a series of dark, rural service roads. I was vibrating with rage, my hands clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I stared out the window, refusing to look at him. The city's coastal chaos gave way to the deep, silent woods of the inland. We were swallowed by a forest of towering pine trees, their dark shapes rushing past us in the gloom. The storm was still raging, the wind howling. After an hour, the landscape changed again. The trees thinned, and we entered a vast, open plain. It was desolate, empty, save for an army of white giants, hundreds of wind turbines, their arms spinning slowly and hypnotically in the storm, their red warning lights blinking in the darkness. We drove for nearly 3 hours in that suffocating, angry silence. Finally, Damien turned off the paved road onto a dirt track that seemed to lead to nowhere. The track ended at the edge of a vast, black body of water, Lake Ashmere, and tucked into a cluster of ancient pines, a house. It wasn't a fortress of glass and steel. It was a simple, sturdy log cabin. It looked warm. It looked normal. This place didn't belong to the Rook Syndicate. This place belonged to Damien. Evo parked his own vehicle near the tree line, a silent sentinel. "I'll secure the perimeter," he murmured, and vanished into the rain. Damien cut the engine. The only sound was the rain drumming on the roof and the distant, mournful sigh of the wind turbines. "You can stay in the car," he said, his voice flat, "or you can come inside, but you are not leaving this lake." He got out, not waiting for my answer. I waited, my pride warring with the bone-deep chill that had set in. After a full minute, I opened the heavy door and ran through the deluge to the cabin's porch. He had the door open. Inside, it was dark and smelled of cedar and cold ashes. He moved with a familiar, economical grace, lighting a single kerosene lamp on a wooden table. The room was simple, a worn leather sofa, a stone fireplace, a small kitchen. I stood dripping by the door, the knife he had given me still tucked into the waistband of my sweatpants. A cold, hard reminder of the night's chaos. "I am not your prisoner," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. He was kneeling at the fireplace, striking a match, laying kindling. The fire caught, a small spark of defiance against the storm. "There's canned soup in the kitchen," he said, his back to me. "Bread in the box. Help yourself." I didn't move. "How long do you plan on keeping me here?" He stood up, turning to face me, the new firelight cast flickering, amber shadows across his face, softening the hard lines, but making his eyes darker. "Until they are no longer a threat. And then what? You just let me go back to a life you've contaminated, a reputation you've allowed to be destroyed." "I'm keeping you alive?" he growled. As if on cue, the single lamp on the table flickered. The cabin's power, drawn from the main grid miles away, sputtered. The lamp went out. The refrigerator's hum died. We were plunged into darkness, saved only by the growing golden light from the fireplace. The storm had cut us off completely. The modern world was gone. Damien moved slowly, finding another lamp, lighting it, the room filled with a soft, warm glow. He looked at me, really looked at me, standing there shivering, my hoodie soaked, the bruise on my shoulder aching. He went to a simple wooden chest in the corner. Opening it, he pulled out a thick, knitted wool scarf. He approached me slowly. I flinched, my hand instinctively moving to the knife. He stopped, his hands raised slightly. "You're cold," he stated. He stepped forward again, and this time I didn't move. He gently took the wet hood of my sweatshirt and pushed it back from my hair. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch was surprisingly light. He brought the wool scarf up, and his movements were hesitant as he began to wrap it around my neck, over my bruised shoulder. I saw his hand tremble, just slightly. A single human tremor in the man of steel. He was so careful not to put pressure on the bruise, his knuckles brushing the skin of my neck. His fingers settled for a moment on my wrist, where my hand was clutching the edge of the hoodie. He paused there, his thumb resting right over my pulse, which was hammering. A frantic bird in a cage. I felt the slight, questioning pressure. We were standing inches apart. All the anger, all the fear was still there, but something else was rising, something potent and terrifying. The only sounds were the crackle of the fire and the drumming of the rain on the roof. We were just breathing, learning the rhythm of each other's breath in the quiet room. He didn't move. He kept just enough space between us for me to retreat. He was giving me the choice. I was the one who broke the space. I raised my hands, my own fingers trembling. I rested them on the solid wall of his chest. I could feel his heart, a steady, powerful beat beneath my palms. He didn't move, but his breath caught. Slowly, deliberately, I slid my hands up, over his shoulders, and laced my fingers behind his neck. I leaned in. The first kiss was hesitant, a question. It was the taste of the storm, of cold air and something uniquely, dangerously him. I expected him to take control, to dominate, to consume. He didn't. He just received it. And so I kissed him again, this time with all the fear and rage and confusion of the last 12 hours. It was a surrender. It was an anchor. It became deeper, and he responded, his lips moving against mine, a slow burn that lit a fire in my blood. I pulled back, just enough to speak. My forehead rested against his. "Don't go anywhere else tonight," I whispered, the words stolen by the fire. The dam inside him broke. His arms came around me, one hand splaying across my back, the other cradling my head, pulling me tightly against him. He wasn't gentle anymore. It was a full, possessive, desperate embrace, an acceptance of my surrender. He buried his face in my hair, his breath hot against my ear. This wasn't about sex. This was about survival. It was about two people, stripped of their armor, finding a moment of sanctuary in the eye of the storm. His lips moved from my mouth to my cheek, my temple, my forehead, a series of soft, reverent kisses. He kissed the sharp line of my jaw, and then, so gently I almost cried out, he pressed his lips to the bruised, aching skin of my shoulder, a silent apology. We stood there for a long time, hands clasped, our breathing slowing until it matched the rhythm of the rain. I woke to the smell of coffee and wood smoke. I was on the leather sofa, tucked under a heavy quilt. I was wearing a thick gray wool sweater that was impossibly soft and smelled like him, like cedar and the clean scent of the storm. I remembered him pulling it from the chest late last night. "You're soaked," he'd said gruffly. "Change." It was a dangerous feeling, this warmth, this sense of belonging, and it warred with the cold fear of the reality outside this cabin. He was standing by the window, a mug in his hand, watching the lake. The storm had passed. The morning light was gray and flat. "I was gonna get out," he said, his voice quiet, not looking at me. "What?" 3 years ago." He turned. His face was stark in the morning light, tired, but the hardness was gone. "I had the plan. Sell the legitimate side of the syndicate, sever the other side, and disappear. I was done." "What stopped you?" "You?" My heart stopped. "Me, I didn't even know you." "I went to that fundraiser, the library. I saw you on that stage, fighting for those old books, for those kids." He looked down into his coffee. "You were so alive, and you weren't afraid. You were fighting a system that was bigger than you, and you didn't care. I realized I couldn't just leave. I couldn't just run. I had to stay to change it. To turn the poison into medicine, I stayed because of you. I stayed." The confession hung in the air, heavier than the storm. I stood up, the sweater falling to my knees. "If that's true," I said, my voice hoarse, "then you'll stop. All of it, the surveillance on my center, the insiders, your people, pull them out, now." He looked at me, a long, searching gaze. He nodded. "Done." He pulled out a satellite phone I hadn't seen before. He dialed a number. "It's me. Call them off. The community center. All assets. It's clean. Off limits. Permanently. Yes, that's the order." He hung up and looked at me. "They're gone." The phone rang again almost immediately. His face tightened. "Evo." He listened. The color drained from his face. "A federal warrant," he swore. A low, vicious sound. "On what grounds?" He turned to me, his eyes black. "The APA and the USB, they've petitioned for my arrest." "For what?" "For kidnapping you." The air left my lungs. "What? No. I'll tell them." "They're using your disappearance against me," he said, his voice a low growl. "They're painting me as the monster who took the community's hero." A cold, hard resolve settled over me. The fear was gone, replaced by a librarian's righteous fury. "They want a war, we'll give them one." I walked over to him. "On my terms. Take me back." "Mara, no. It's too dangerous." "You said I was the battlefield," I said, my voice ringing with a strength I didn't know I had. "You were wrong. I'm the weapon. That forged document I found, that's the bullet. And I'm going to fire it. We're not going to win this in the dark. Damien. We're going to win in the light, in front of everyone." He stared at me, a new, profound respect dawning in his eyes. He nodded slowly. "I'll walk beside you," he said, "but you're the one who speaks." We didn't drive back to the Cliff House. We drove straight into the heart of the city. The East Island Cultural Center wasn't my community center. It was neutral ground, and at 10 a.m., it was packed. My small tech team, 3 brilliant, sleep-deprived volunteers from the neighborhood had worked through the night, setting up a projector, a secure server, and multiple live streams. I stood at the podium. I was still wearing Damien's gray sweater. It felt like armor. My hands were steady. I looked out at the sea of local reporters, skeptical city officials, and the nervous, hopeful faces of the Wharfside residents in the front rows. Damien was not there. He was, as he'd promised, beside me but not seen. He was a ghost in the network, a presence in the secure comms line in my ear, a shadow watching from a dark sedan parked 2 blocks away. "My name is Mara Quinn," I began, my voice ringing clear and strong, amplified by the microphone. "For the last 48 hours, the Urban Safeguard Bureau and its private partners have called me a criminal, an informant, and a drug trafficker. Today, I'm here to show you what they're so afraid of." The projector screen behind me lit up. It wasn't a graph. It was a document, the forged auction minutes. "This," I said, pointing, "is the legal justification for the APA's sale of the Harbor Light Shipyard, and it is a forgery." A murmur went through the crowd. "My team has analyzed the metadata." A string of code appeared on the screen. "The digital hash doesn't match the city's public ledger. The creation timestamp is dated after the document was supposedly signed, and the shell company that bought the property, Harbor Vista Development, was registered to a P.Noe box in Delaware just 1 hour before the auction. It somehow managed to win. I leaned into the microphone. They didn't just bend the rules. They created a fake reality to steal our homes. And when I found the proof, they tried to kill me. Then they tried to kidnap me. And now, they are trying to silence me. As if summoned, the heavy doors of the cultural center burst open. This is an active investigation. Cade Mercer marched in, flanked by a dozen heavily armed USB officers in full tactical gear. The cameras swung from me to him. The room erupted in chaos. "Mara Quinn," Mercer shouted, waving a piece of paper. "You are in possession of stolen federal documents. We have a warrant to seize all electronic equipment. Shut it down." 2 officers lunged for the podium. "For my laptop?" "No," a new voice roared. A woman I recognized, Mrs. Anya Sharma, a mother of 3 from the wharf side, stepped in front of them. "You will not touch her." And then they were there. The community. They hadn't just stayed in the front rows. They rose as one. Fishermen in heavy boots, taxi drivers, the mothers from my reading program. They streamed in from the hallways, alerted by my team. They formed a human chain, a wall of bodies, standing between me and Mercer's officers. They held up their phones, every single one of them live streaming. "You are in violation of the Community Transparency Ordinance," Jesse's mother shouted, her voice shaking but powerful, reading from a printed sheet. Article 4. No enforcement action shall be taken against a public assembly without a 30-minute written notice. It was a local ordinance, a piece of paper against guns, but they were using it. They were fighting back with my own weapons, the rules. Mercer's face turned a deep, blotchy red. "This is a federal warrant. It supersedes your town hall rules. Get out of the way." "Ma'am, please step aside," one of the officers said, trying to push past Mrs. Sharma. "Do not touch me," she yelled. Suddenly, the massive projector screen behind me flickered. The forged document vanished. In its place, a video. It was me. I was on the steps of the center. Just moments ago, I was seen arguing with a USB officer, and then I clearly, visibly, shoved him down the steps. The video was grainy. It was shocking. "See," Mercer yelled, pointing. "She assaulted an officer. This is no longer a civil matter. This is a criminal arrest. Move." The crowd hesitated. They looked from the screen to me, their faith wavering. "Well, it's a lie," I shouted. "Look at it." "It's a deep fake," a calm voice said. It was one of my tech volunteers, Kai. He was at his own terminal, his fingers flying. "They're getting sloppy." On the screen, the video froze. "Look," Kai said, his voice now patched into the main audio. He zoomed in on my hand. "The pixels are tearing. The light on her face is coming from the left, but the shadow on the officer is coming from the right." He ran a program. The video broke down, frame by frame. The officer I had supposedly shoved flickered, his arm distorting, a digital ghost. The crowd gasped. My team had debunked the deep fake, live, in front of 50 news cameras. It was Mercer's ultimate humiliation. He had lost control. He had lost the narrative. He had lost, period. I heard Damien's voice in my ear, a calm, cold whisper. "The lawyers are at the courthouse. They're filing now. Just hold on." Mercer unholstered his weapon. The room went silent. "I said," he screamed, his voice cracking with pure, unhinged fury. "Move." He wasn't aiming at anyone. He was aiming at the ceiling. He fired. The sound of the gunshot in the enclosed room was a physical explosion. It was a deafening, terrifying crack that vibrated through my bones. People screamed. They ducked. Mercer had crossed the line. "He shot, he fired his weapon," someone yelled. In my ear, Damien's voice was sharp. "That's it, he's done. The city charter, Article 9, Section 4, any discharge of a firearm in a non-lethal situation triggers an automatic suspension of the Bureau's authority. He just revoked his own warrant. As if by magic, 2 people in suits, a man and a woman I didn't recognize, pushed through the crowd. Officer Mercer, the woman's voice was like ice. By the authority of the Harbor Light City Council, you are in procedural violation. Stand down. All USB officers, stand down. Mercer stared at her, his gun still smoking, his face a mask of disbelief. And then, a third man, a simple court bailiff, pushed his way to the podium. He handed me a folded document. Mara Quinn. Yes. You've been granted emergency protective status by the Port Adjudication Court. This order supersedes the USB warrant. They can't touch you. They can't touch your data. The room was silent for a beat, and then it erupted. Not in chaos, in applause. The residents of the wharfside, the fishermen, the mothers, they cheered, the cameras flashed, capturing Mercer's face, slack-jawed and utterly defeated. Get them out, the woman from the city council ordered. Reluctantly, furiously, Mercer and his team retreated, walking a gauntlet of cell phones recording their every move. I turned back to the podium, my heart hammering. My tech, Kai, gave me a thumbs up. He hit a key. On the projector screen, a new message appeared. Evidence packet _MQ_774. Uploaded to Harbor Light, Community Decentralized Archive, public_access. The data is safe, I announced, my voice raw. It's yours. It's all of yours. They can't silence us. They can't stop us. Later that night, I was back at the Cliff House. It was quiet. The victory felt temporary, fragile. My personal phone, the one Damien had returned to me, chimed, a new, encrypted message from him. It wasn't text, it was a file. I opened it. It was a map of the enemy. It was a complex diagram of the APA, the USB, and Silas Calder, but now there were new lines of panic. The first line, legal attack, failed. The second, media attack, failed. But there was a third line, glowing red, that connected all three entities to a single point in the future. Coordinated attack, Harbor Light, Freeport, bid night. It was 2 days from now, the night the city council would vote. Live, on the final sale of the docks, the night the entire city would be watching. I looked up from the phone, out the massive glass window at the port lights below. Damien was right. This wasn't the end. It was the semi-final. The real fight wouldn't be in a courtroom or on the news. It would be at the Freeport, a place that was half public stage, half shadowy negotiation. It was their last stand, and it would be mine. The Harbor Light Freeport Convention Center was a cavernous temple of beige carpet and polished steel. It was built for boring, billion-dollar handshakes. Tonight, it was a war zone. Every local news affiliate was present, their cameras turning the main hall into a blinding television studio. On the polished dais, Mayor Thompson, a man who looked permanently apologetic, tapped the microphone. The live feed was stable. Ladies and gentlemen, then he began, his voice slick with a practiced, false sincerity. We are here tonight to ratify the bold future of Harbor Light's logistics. He held up a thick, leather-bound portfolio. The pen was in his hand. He was ready to sign. I was not at the podium. I was sitting in the third row, a civilian, flanked by two of Damien's lawyer's men who looked like they could argue a case or break a kneecap with equal skill. A tiny, flesh-colored comms unit was nestled in my ear. "We are live," Evo's voice whispered from a remote location. "I am inside their presentation server and their internal security feed and the fire control system. They are sloppy." "Hold!" Damien's voice rumbled. Deeper, closer. "Lawyers are moving. Front one is a go." As the mayor cleared his throat to read the final motion, my lead attorney, Alani, stood up. "Point of order, Mr. Mayor." Her voice was a scalpel, cutting through the polite hush. The mayor blinked, confused. The cameras swung to her. "A petition for emergency injunction was just filed with the Port Adjudication Court, citing gross malfeasance in the bidding process. This is out of order." A man from the APA began. "It is entirely in order," Alani countered, projecting to the back row. We have digital proof that the winning bid from Harbor Vista Development was selected by a proprietary algorithm. An algorithm written and owned by Harbor Vista Development. They wrote their own test. Mr. Mayor and, surprise, they gave themselves a perfect score. The hall erupted in murmurs. The mayor looked desperately to his aides. On the live feed, the view count was exploding. "He's trying to kill the feed." Ivo's voice came, calm and analytical. "Silas is in the AV booth. He's trying to wipe the presentation server. He just hit delete." "Ivo," I whispered, my heart hammering. "Now." "Executing Mirror Cloud," Ivo replied. On the massive projector screen behind the mayor, the Future of Harbor Lights slideshow vanished. It was replaced by a black screen. The mayor looked relieved. Then the screen flashed white and my evidence appeared. The forged auction document, time-stamped for the future. The deep fake video of me taking the envelope. The clip of Mercer firing his gun in the community center. "What is that?" the mayor stammered. "Get that down!" "He's still hitting delete. Mara," Ivo said. There was humor in his voice. "The harder he tries to wipe the file, the more data packets it mirrors back to the main screen. He's broadcasting our entire case for us." A man in a dark suit was whispering frantically into Silas Calder's ear in the AV booth, visible through the glass. Silas threw his headset down. "He's panicking." I breathed. "Front 3, Damien's voice said. It was strained. He was moving fast. "I'm in." While the hall was mesmerized by the screen, Damien was 3 floors below, in the concrete engineering tunnels. He wasn't alone. He and his team moved like shadows between the massive HVAC units. He was hunting. I knew he wasn't carrying a gun. Before we left, I had seen him pick up a heavy, black metal object from his desk. It was an antique time card puncher, greasy and smelling of machine oil. "My grandfather's," he'd said, his voice rough. "Punched in at the dockyards with this for 50 years. It's a reminder. You always finish the job." Suddenly, the lights in the hall died, replaced by flashing red strobes. A deafening alarm blared. "Whoop, whoop, whoop!" An automated voice filled the air. "Emergency! Evacuate! Evacuate! A fire has been reported in this sector." The crowd surged. "Panic!" "It's a fake," I whispered, gripping the arms of my chair. He pulled the fire alarm to clear the room and kill the broadcast. The main doors of the convention center burst open, but it wasn't firefighters. It was Cade Mercer, his face pale and sweating, flanked by 8 USB officers wearing tactical vests marked Emergency Response. "Everyone remain calm," Mercer yelled, projecting authority he didn't feel. "We are here to assist with the evacuation. We will escort the council." He then pointed directly at me. "Miss Quinn, you are a person of interest. You need to come with us now, for your safety." This was it. The public kidnapping, the legal cover, in the chaos of a fire drill. He could grab me, and I would simply disappear. His men started to push through the panicked crowd, their eyes locked on me. Alani grabbed my arm. "Mara, we have to go. We'll fight this from the outside." I looked at the stage. I looked at Mercer's advancing men. I looked at the fleeing crowd. No. I ripped the comm from my ear. I pulled away from Alani. I did not run for the exit. I ran for the stage. I vaulted the small stairs, grabbing the mayor's abandoned microphone just as the live feed camera operator, realizing he had the only story that mattered, zoomed in on my face. "Stop." My voice, amplified, boomed through the hall, a physical shockwave that cut through the alarm. "There is no fire." The crowd paused. Mercer's men stopped. Even the alarm seemed to quiet for a beat. "This is a lie," I shouted, pointing at Mercer. "He pulled that alarm to stop the broadcast to silence me because he is a criminal." "She's lying," Mercer shrieked. "The fire is—" "The system is clean, Mara," Ivo's voice said, now patched directly into the main audio feed. "I've just rerouted the fire control panel. Go!" As he spoke, the alarms cut off, the strobes died, the bright, white hall lights snapped back on, clinically and brutally exposing everything. On the main screen, the fire icon vanished, replaced by a simple text, System Override M, Quinn. The hall was dead silent. The fire was exposed. I held up my phone, my thumb on the connection to the projector. Silas Calder, Cade Mercer, and the APA. They don't just want to steal the docks. They've been doing it for years. I hit the button. A list of names appeared on the screen. Harbor Vista Development, Mistral Freight, Northcrest Civic Foundation, all shell companies, all channeling illegal donations. I was just reading now. My voice was shaking, but it was strong. $500,000 to the mayor's re-election campaign, $72,000 in consulting fees to an account in the name of Cade Mercer, badge number 729, falsified environmental reports, kickbacks from ghost employee contracts. It's all here. I was not a victim. I was a librarian, and I was reading them their overdue notices. In the humid, vibrating machine room, Damien cornered his man. Silas Calder was by the emergency exit, a briefcase in his hand. He spun around, his eyes wide with animal panic. "Rook, get out of my way. The whole building is—" "It's not," Damien said. He stepped out of the shadow. He was holding the heavy, cast-iron time puncher in one hand. "You have two choices, Silas." He held up his phone, showing the live feed of me, at the podium, reading his crimes. One, I hit this button. Your entire private directory, every black market ledger, every offshore account, every bribe you ever took goes live on that screen, right now. Damien then held up a single sheet of paper, a confession. Or two. You sign this. You name your masters at the APA. You become the state's witness. And you live. Silas laughed. It was a high-pitched, hysterical sound. You think you've won. You think you're smart. He fumbled in his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, red detonator. Well, this isn't my only game, you idiot one. Doc 17, your little trap. I left a present, a container full of ammonium nitrate, wired to this, a little punctuation. For your girlfriend's speech. He jammed his thumb down on the button. Nothing. A tiny, pathetic beep emitted from the device. The low battery light flashed once. Damien smiled. It was not a nice smile. Evo disarmed that an hour ago. He said the wiring was sloppy. He stepped forward, raising the time puncher. Time to punch out, Silas. Back in the hall, Cade Mercer was finished. His authority was gone. His face was broadcast on every channel, a mask of sweating, cornered guilt. He did the only thing a desperate man could. He pointed at me, his hand shaking. She did this. She faked the fire. She's inciting a riot. She's the criminal. This is anarchy. Arrest her. I'm ordering you to arrest Mara Quinn. Mercer's face was a grotesque mask of sweat and failed authority. His order to arrest me hung in the brightly lit, silent hall. The cameras were on him. My community was watching. The entire city was watching. His two remaining loyal officers looked at each other, their resolve breaking. But Mercer, a man with nothing left, was a dangerous animal. He unhooked his handcuffs from his belt. She is resisting. She is obstructing. He started to advance on the stage. On me, his hands out, the steel cuffs dangling. I'm placing you under arrest, Quinn, for conspiracy, for everything. I held my ground. I gripped the microphone stand, my knuckles white. That's enough. The voice came from the side aisle. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension like a shockwave. Damien Rook stepped out from the shadows of a service corridor. He was immaculate. His dark suit was unruffled. His hair was perfect. He looked like he had just stepped out for an evening walk. The only sign of his battle below was the antique, cast-iron time puncher he held loosely in his left hand. He walked calmly, deliberately, down the center aisle, directly towards the stage, towards Mercer, towards me. The cameras swung to follow him, a new, magnetic subject. Let her go, Damien said. His voice was quiet, reasonable. Mercer stopped, stunned. Rook, you're part of this. You're under arrest for kidnapping, No. Damien didn't even look at him. His eyes were on me. He gave me a small, almost imperceptible nod. You did it. He stopped just short of the stage, standing between me and Mercer. He looked at the trembling, furious officer. Then, slowly, Damien held out his right hand, wrist first, offering it. You want an arrest, Damien said. Arrest me. The kidnapping charge, obstruction, whatever you want, take me. But you will not touch her. No. The word ripped from my throat. It was a raw, primal scream. Damien, no, you can't. He turned his head, just slightly, to look up at me on the stage. The camera zoomed in, capturing the strange, intimate moment in the middle of the public execution. He smiled, a small, genuine, devastating smile. Your border is freedom, Mara, he said, his voice soft, but it carried in the silent room. My border is making sure you get to have it. He was sacrificing himself. He was trading his life for mine, using his own dark reputation as the final piece of leverage. He would go down as the villain, the kidnapper, so I could walk away as the hero. No, I started to move, to run to him. Stay back, Mercer shrieked, his panic turning to giddy triumph. He saw his escape. He lunged, snapping the cuff around Damien's proffered wrist. You're under arrest, Rook. You have the right to... Freeze, nobody move. The command came from behind Mercer. The main doors of the convention center burst open again. This time, it wasn't the USB. They were in dark blue windbreakers, with gold lettering I'd never seen before, Metropolitan Integrity Circle. They were calm, professional, and they moved with a lethal, no-nonsense efficiency. They were not local cops. They were feds. What? Who the hell are you? Mercer stammered. The lead agent, a sharp-faced woman with her own weapon drawn, didn't look at him. She looked at me and at my tech, Kai, who was still at his station. Mr. Kai Chen, she called out. We received your data feed. Thank you. The packet is secure. My team, not Damien's, my team had routed the evidence not just to the public archive, but to this integrity circle, the final failsafe. I had, without knowing it, called in the cavalry. Mercer's world was collapsing. He had no authority. He had no power. He had just arrested the wrong man, and his backup was being arrested by their backup. He did the last thing he could. He snapped. He dropped the other cuff. He ripped his service pistol from its holster. No! He screamed, a sound of pure, animal rage. He wasn't a cop. He was just a failed man with a gun. He raised it, not at Damien, but at me, at the source of his humiliation. It happened in a fraction of a second. I saw the black hole of the barrel. I heard the first syllable of my name on his lips. Damien moved. He was not a man. He was a force of nature. He roared, a sound from deep in his chest, and launched himself, not at Mercer, but at me. He hit me like a linebacker, his arms encircling me, his body a solid wall, shielding me from the stage, from the threat. The world exploded in sound, a deafening crack. It was the gunshot. I felt Damien's body jolt against mine, a hard, violent spasm. He grunted, a sharp exhalation of air, his arms tightening around me like a vice. The entire hall held its breath. He didn't fall. He just sagged, his full weight pressed against me, his head dropping to my shoulder. I held him, my arms wrapped around his back, my hands gripping the fabric of his suit jacket. The cameras were flashing, a storm of silent lightning around us. Damien, I whispered, my voice thick. I looked down. There was a tear in the fabric of his suit, high on his left shoulder, near the collarbone. A dark, spreading stain. You're hit, I stated. It wasn't a question. He was breathing hard, his face buried in my neck. He raised his head, his eyes searching mine. They were filled with pain, but also with a burning, fierce pride. I felt no tears. My body was cold, my resolve hardening into diamond. I held him upright, my hand pressing against his bleeding shoulder, my other hand still gripping the microphone stand. I looked out at the cameras, at the city. If you fall, I whispered, for his ears only, I will stand right here, and I will finish telling them." He managed a grimace, a shadow of his smile. He leaned in, his lips brushing my ear, his whisper a ghost of his normal voice. "Good. Don't you dare let me be the reason you're silent." He slumped again, a dead weight, and I held him, refusing to let him go down. "Get him on the ground, cuff him." The Integrity Circle agent was screaming, two of Mercer's own USB officers, their faces white with shock at what he had done, were the ones to tackle him. They slammed him to the polished floor. The sound of his head hitting the dais was sickeningly final. "Cade Mercer," the agent said, "you are under arrest for the attempted murder of a civilian witness." One of his own officers, the one he had tried to order to arrest me, was the one to wrench his arms behind his back and snap the handcuffs on. "Paramedics," Alani was screaming. "We need paramedics on the stage." But just as the chaos reached its peak, a new, terrible scene played out on the massive screen. The feed from the machine room. Evo had Silas Calder on his knees. The broken man was sobbing, a pen in his hand, signing the confession Damien had put in front of him. As he finished his signature, he looked up, his face a mask of bitter, spiteful hatred, directly into the camera. "You think this is over," he spat, his voice now booming over the convention center's audio system. "You think you've won?" He was looking at Damien, who was bleeding in my arms. "They'll cut you to pieces in prison. Rook, you're a dead man. Your story ends here." The cameras cut from Mercer being dragged away to the massive, close-up image of Silas's sneering face. Then they cut to us, to me, holding Damien. And they zoomed in on Damien's face. He was pale. He was in pain. But he was looking at the screen. And he was smiling, a calm, satisfied, terrifying smile. He had won. The antiseptic smell was the first thing I recognized. Saint Elora General, again. But this time, it was different. There was no panic, no fluorescent glare. The lights in the private room were dimmed to a soft, warm amber. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor was slow, steady, a baseline of survival. Damien was asleep in the bed. His left shoulder and chest were heavily bandaged, his arm in a sling. An IV line fed clear fluid into his free hand, but he was breathing, deep and even. He was alive. I sat in the chair beside him, my hand holding his. His fingers were warm, his grip surprisingly strong. Even in sleep, I hadn't let go since they wheeled him out of post-op 2 hours ago. My personal phone, resting on the bedside table, vibrated. I looked at it, annoyed at the intrusion. It was an unknown number, but local. I reluctantly let go of Damien's hand and answered, keeping my voice to a whisper. "This is Mara Quinn." "Miss Quinn," a hesitant, administrative voice replied. "This is Beverly from St. Elora's Patient Advocacy. We just wanted to verify something. We're so sorry for the confusion during your last admission. We're doing an internal review." It's fine," I said, my eyes on Damien's face. "Well, that's the thing," Beverly said, her voice dropping. "We found the original intake. The digital file wasn't tampered with. It was just old. The system pulled an old emergency contact file." A pause. "Miss Quinn, you're the one who listed Mr. Rook as your emergency contact 6 months ago. Do you remember this?" The world tilted. "What?" As if summoned. The door to the room opened silently. Tanta Lila entered. She wasn't carrying tea. She was carrying a file. She looked at me, her eyes soft with a truth I didn't understand. No, I said into the phone. "That's impossible." Tanta Lila walked to the bed. She placed a sheet of paper, a photocopy of a hospital form, in my lap. "Beverly," she said to me, her voice gentle. "Tell her you found the paper original from the blizzard." Yes, the voice on the phone stammered. "The blizzard. In February. You were brought in for severe dehydration and exhaustion. We found you at the community center. You wrote this." I looked down at the paper. It was an emergency intake form. My signature was at the bottom, weak and spidery, and in the box marked emergency contact in my own hurried, barely legible handwriting was his name. Damien Rook? My mind fractured, and a memory, buried under 6 months of stress and denial, surged to the surface. The blizzard, the center's heating had failed. We'd been sheltering 20 families for 3 days straight. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. I was just running on fumes. I remembered being on the phone, begging a city official for a repair crew, and the world just fading to gray. I remembered waking up, briefly, in the back office. I was on the cot, and I was freezing, and there was a man there. He was standing in the shadows, his black overcoat covered in snow. He was holding a portable generator in one hand and 2 industrial heaters in the other. He hadn't come for me. He had come because the community needed heat. "You need to go to the hospital," his low voice rumbled from the shadows. The families?" I had whispered. "Are warm now. You're no good to them dead." I remembered being at St. Elora, the nurse pushing the clipboard at me. "You have to list someone, honey." I was so tired, so alone, and the only person who had shown up in the worst storm in 50 years, the only person who had brought heat when the city had failed, was him. I wrote his name. I must have... And then... I'd forgotten. The stress, the concussion, the attack. It had all wiped the memory clean. No one had altered the file. No one had hacked the system. In my weakest, most vulnerable moment, 6 months ago, I had chosen him. I looked at the television, muted in the corner of the room. The local news was a silent movie of our victory. The headline read, "Apia bid frozen indefinitely." There was footage of Cade Mercer, in his torn suit, being put in a police car. Mercer indicted, and then a photo of Silas Calder, looking haunted, his lawyers on either side. Calder takes deal, testifies against Harbor Vista Network. It was over. We had won, and no one else had to get shot. We'd won it my way, with the truth. A low groan came from the bed. Damien's eyes were open. They were hazy with medication, but they were focused on me. "Hey," I whispered, dropping the phone onto the bed, grabbing his hand again. "You're okay," he rasped, his voice rough. "I'm fine," I said, my throat tight. "You're the one with the bullet in your shoulder, you idiot." He tried to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his bandages. "Mara..." "Shh, just lie still." I gently pushed him back. "They said the bullet went clean through. You were lucky." I held up the paper, the intake form. "You're not going to believe this." I told him, the blizzard, the exhaustion, my handwriting. He watched me, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he just nodded, a small, pained movement. "I was there," he confirmed, his voice barely a whisper. "At the center. You looked so small. You wouldn't stop fighting. You left before I woke up." I wasn't supposed to be there." "Damien," I said, my voice breaking. I leaned in, unable to stop myself. "Why?" He raised his good hand, his fingers finding my face, his thumb brushing away a tear I didn't know had fallen. "I was there," he repeated, his voice gaining a fraction of its old strength. "And I always will be, if you still want me." I didn't answer with words. I leaned down, resting my forehead against his. His skin was warm. I closed my eyes. The world outside, the indictments, the victory, the flashing news lights, it all just dissolved. There was only the quiet room, the steady beep of the monitor, and his breathing. His good hand moved from my cheek, his fingers lacing with mine, our palms pressing together. He said everything right there, in the pressure of his grip. I lifted my head, just an inch, and kissed him. It wasn't the desperate, storm-fueled kiss from the cabin. It was slow. It was a promise. A soft, lingering kiss on his lips, then his cheek, then his temple. It was the taste of relief, and of a future I hadn't let myself imagine. There was no chaos. For the first time, there was just peace. 2 weeks later, I stood on a new podium. This one was outside at Dock 17, the air smelling of fresh paint and salt. The Rook Syndicate was no more. In its place was the Rook Harbor Light Logistics Initiative. Damien had signed the papers from his hospital bed. He'd made Evo, stunned and protesting, the CEO of the new, fully transparent corporation. And he'd signed over 49% of the company. To the Harbor Light Community Trust, Dock 17 was ours. No one is weak, I said, my voice carrying over the crowd. When they have a community standing behind them, they tried to tell us we were powerless. They were wrong. I looked at the new, clean cranes, at the families of the wharfside in the front row. But we also learned that true strength is knowing when to stop, knowing how to build, instead of how to fight. That night, I found him on the roof of St. Elora. He'd been discharged, but he'd lingered. He was standing at the ledge, his arm still in a sling, looking out at the city. Our city. Its lights spread out like a carpet of fallen stars. I walked up beside him. "I hate hospitals," he said, not looking at me. I smiled. "I know." He turned, his eyes finding mine in the dusk. Unless they're calling to say you need me." I laughed, a soft, genuine laugh. I stepped closer, into his space, into his warmth. I reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. I pressed it back against his chest, flat over his heart. "Then keep your line open," I whispered. "Forever." He didn't need his good arm. He wrapped his other arm around my waist, pulling me against him. We stood there, under the wind from the salt flats, a Mafia love story that didn't end in bullets or fire, but in a promise, held secure by both the heart and the law. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Please, drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let's connect. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really enjoyed this, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.